This is the moment that many have been waiting for, and it has been the subject of much conjecture for ages. In Jewish tradition, with the completion of the Third Temple, a new era begins. Uncertainty and tension accompany this momentous occasion. What effect would this have on the already volatile situation in that region? When will other faiths and parties respond? The world is eagerly awaiting to see how this historic event will affect the future. We can imagine a third temple in Jerusalem, but it doesn't exist yet. A new Jewish temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is what the term Third Temple refers to. King Solomon erected the original temple in the 10th century BCE. The Second Temple was built following the Babylonian exile in 516 BCE and was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. Many Jews and Christians have held the view that a third temple will be constructed before the end of the world or the coming of the Messiah for generations. The Temple Mount is sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians, making the question of whether or not to build a third temple there an emotionally charged one. Several Jewish and Christian organizations have been pushing for the rebuilding of the temple and even trying to get the ball rolling in the preliminary planning stages. Concerned about the possibility of violence and the need for peace negotiations with the Palestinians, the Israeli government has thus far made no measures toward building a third temple. The concept of a third temple and its potential theological and political consequences continue to be the subject of heated controversy. The Jewish people believe that the Book of Ezekiel, which contains specific details of a future temple, will be fulfilled in the Third Temple. Certain Jewish movements like the Temple Mount Faithful and the Temple Institute have held that the restoration of the temple was an essential prerequisite to the arrival of the Messiah. Rebuilding the temple is also associated with end-time predictions in the Christian faith, especially in the Book of Revelation. Some Christians think that Jesus' second coming and the creation of his earthly kingdom will coincide with the completion of the temple's reconstruction. The political climate of the Temple Mount, however, has made the question of whether or not to build a third temple a difficult one. The Islamic Waqf is currently in charge of the Temple Mount, and as such, the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, two of Islam's holiest sites, are under its care. The region is sacred to both Muslims and Palestinians, who would strongly object to any plans to construct a third temple there. Clashes between Israeli police and Muslims broke out in 1987 when Temple Mount believers tried to lay a cornerstone for a new temple on the holy site. Several Jewish groups in recent years have called for a third temple to be built utilizing modular building techniques, with the temple itself being constructed elsewhere and then transported to the Temple Mount for final assembly. And there is hope for your future, declares Adonai. Your children shall return to their country. Jeremiah 31:16. The practice of doing good deeds and adhering to God's message eventually gave rise to prayer in the form that we know today, substituting the practice of offering sacrifices until the temple could be rebuilt. This new era called for a verse that was tailor-made to meet the requirements of the time. It provided a useful alternative to the performances of ritual and brought legitimacy, authority, and authenticity as a result of a biblical verse that addressed current problems and outlined a path forward. Not an army will bring about redemption, rather Jews who lived engaged and meaningful Jewish lives and who continue to innovate, invent, and infuse our ancient wisdom with new air are the ones who will bring about redemption. All of the Israeli prophets predicted that in the end times, the people of Israel who had been exiled would return to the land that had been promised to them and that the temple would also be restored. When that time comes, the nations will know that it is I, the Lord, who make Israel holy, since my sanctuary will reside permanently among them. Since ancient times, members of the Jewish people have traveled in large numbers to the Western Wall, also known as the Wailing Wall, to express their sorrow over the destruction of the temple, to pray for the reconstruction of the temple, to seek the blessings of the priests, and to seek forgiveness for their sins. The fulfillment of prophecy in Israel, including the building of the third temple. I will bring back my people Israel from exile, and they will rebuild the towns that have been destroyed so that they may live in them. They will cultivate gardens and consume the fruit of their labor. They will plant vineyards and drink the wine they produce. Israel will eventually be established in their land, and they will never again be uprooted from the place that I have given them. Amos 9:14-15. There are a great number of skeptics located all over the world who prefer to assert that God has turned his back on the people of Israel and that Israel was reborn as a result of the actions of man alone. Nonetheless, the scriptures reveal that God never intended to permanently disown his chosen people. You, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, a descendant of Abraham, my friend, you, whom I have taken from the ends of the world and called from the remotest portions of it, and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not rejected you. Isaiah 41:9. The return of the Jewish people to the land was always part of God's plan, and he never intended for it to happen on human terms. After being scattered around the globe for the past 19 centuries, the Jewish people are now making their way back to the Holy Land, exactly as the prophets had said they would. Have no fear, for I am with you. I will bring your children from the east, and I will gather you from the west. Do not fear, because I am with you. I will yell to the north, give them up, and they will comply. Do not hold them back, they were told to the south. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the farthest reaches of the world. Isaiah 43, 5-6. Not only are former Israelites making their way back to the land they were promised, but also the preparatory work for the construction of the Third Temple is making significant headway thanks to the efforts of the Temple Institute and the Temple Mount Faithful movement. Why construct a third temple in Jerusalem? See, here I am, along with the children that the Lord has bestowed upon me. We are signs and symbols from the Lord Almighty, who resides on Mount Zion, and we are to be found in Israel. Isaiah 8:18. You might ask yourself, if the sanctuary was a copy and a shadow of what is in heaven, and Yeshua, Jesus, serves in the sanctuary, the true tabernacle set up by the Lord, why contemplate building the holy temple? If the sanctuary was a copy and a shadow of what is in heaven, as Hebrews 8:5 says, then why even consider building the holy temple? The Holy Temple in Jerusalem was never merely a construction or building. Rather, it was always intended to be a dwelling place on earth for the divine presence of God. It was said by the Lord, "Let them build a sanctuary for me, so that I may dwell shaken among them," the Lord said to the Israelites. Shekinah is a related word that is not present in the original Hebrew Bible. However, it is employed in rabbinic literature and Bible translations to denote the Lord's divine presence. This abode shaken forms the related word Shekinah. The prophet Ezekiel was present when the divine presence left the temple where it had been dwelling. On the Temple Mount in the holy city of Jerusalem, however, he also witnessed the reconstruction of an eternal and permanent dwelling place for God. This happened throughout his lifetime. The splendor of the Lord entered the temple through the door that looked toward the east. Someone was calling out to me from within the temple, and I heard them. He spoke to the Son of Man, saying, "Son of man, this is the seat of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is a place among the Jews where I will spend the rest of my life." Ezekiel 43, 4-7. Rambam, also known as Rabbi Moses Maimonides, was a Jewish philosopher and Torah scholar who lived in the Middle Ages. He stated that the temple had an importance that will last forever. He explained in the book The Rules of God's Chosen Home, which he titled Hilkos Bias Ha-Bekaira, that the temple served two fundamental purposes: to make known to humankind the divine presence of God, which resided above the mercy seat at the Ark of the Covenant in the tabernacle. There, above the cover between the two cherubim that are above the Ark of the Testimony, I will meet with you and give you all of my orders for the Israelites, the Lord said. The Ark of the Testimony is in the middle of the cover, Exodus 25:22, to make it easier to offer the necessary sacrifices when they are called for. The Jewish people, on the other hand, are unable to continue offering these sacrifices ever since the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 AD. In point of fact, only 202 of the 613 laws that are outlined in the Torah can be carried out in the absence of a temple. Because there is no longer a temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish people now worship the God of Israel in the synagogues of their own local communities and study the Torah. They no longer bring offerings of animals, but instead bring acts of prayer, repentance, and charity. In spite of the widespread belief that animal sacrifices have been eliminated for all time, the Bible's prophecy indicates that this simply is not the case. The Lord reveals to the prophet Ezekiel that the prescribed sacrifices would be offered in a future temple, and they are as follows. The apartments to the north and south that face the courtyard of the temple are the priests' rooms. It is in these rooms that the priests who approach the Lord will consume the most sacred sacrifices. There, they will deposit the holiest offerings, the grain offerings, the sin offerings, and the guilt offerings, for the place is holy. Ezekiel 42:13. A significant question, however, arises not only for the Jewish community, but also for all of those who believe in Yeshua. Will the next temple, also known as the Third Temple, be Ezekiel's temple, in which the divine presence will once again reside, or will some other presence reside in another temple? The Dome of the Rock is the structure that currently sits atop the Temple Mount. Daniel, Jesus, the anti-Messiah, and the Third Temple all play a role in this prophecy. The prophetic writings of the book of Daniel and the Brit Chadashah, also known as the New Testament, provide us with important information regarding the function of a restored temple during the end of the age. Both Daniel and Yeshua teach us that the anti-Messiah will contaminate the Third Temple before the return of the actual Messiah. Both of them refer to the spiritual profanation that has taken place in the temple as the abomination that causes desolation. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that brings desolation spoken of via the prophet Daniel, and it is important that the reader understands this, then people who are in Judea should flee to the mountains. The Bible says, In Daniel 9:21-24, the prophet Daniel predicts, as part of his 70 weeks prophecy, that Jerusalem and the demolished temple will be restored, that the Messiah will be murdered, cut off, and that Jerusalem and the temple will once again be destroyed. Daniel's prophecy is found in the book of Daniel. The prophet Daniel predicted that the Messiah would be killed before the destruction of the temple. After the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be severed from the earth and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end of it will arrive with a flood. Even to the end, there will be a battle, desolations are predetermined. Daniel 9:26. Just 40 years after Yeshua had his head severed by having his execution on a tree, this prophecy was fulfilled in AD 70 with the destruction of the temple. As a result of our research into a number of biblical passages pertaining to the end times, we are convinced that the prince or ruler who is referred to in Daniel as the anti-Messiah will appear exactly as he is described. Daniel prophesies that he will confirm a peace pact for 1 week, which is typically read as a period of 7 years, but that he will break that commitment in the middle of the term. And he will make some translations say confirm a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put an end to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, some interpretations say, set up an idol on the wing or precipice of the temple, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes des. The Antichrist will likewise declare himself to be God when he comes to power. He, the man of lawlessness, will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, to the point that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. The Bible says, he, the man of lawlessness, will also exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped. 2 Thess 2:4. The Temple Institute and the Temple Mount and Eretz Yisrael Faithful Movement are the two primary Jewish groups responsible for making preparations for the construction of the Third Temple and the re-establishment of worship that includes the offering of sacrifices. There are also plans being developed by other groups. On the Mount, one person proposes constructing a synagogue in one of the 4 corners of the platform, while another proposes erecting a tent in the pattern of the tabernacle. Why? For as the head of the Temple Institute, Chaim Richman, explains in his video series titled Mythbuster, buildings do not tumble down from heaven. He goes on to say that it is a mitzvah to build a temple using Exodus 23:8, and that Jews ought to be obeying all 613 commandments, which necessitates a temple. He does this by highlighting the fact that a temple is necessary. In addition to this, he asserts that the rebuilding of the Third Temple will bring the light back into the world, referring to the illumination that vacated the Temple Mount along with the divine presence of the Lord. In addition to this, he is of the opinion that the temple will reconnect all of creation with one another. It is the Holy Temple that makes it possible for all of humanity to have a direct and dynamic relationship with God, and it is the Holy Temple that makes it possible for each and every one of us to reach our full potential. On the other hand, the writings of Brit Chadasha and the books of Daniel 9 and 11 illuminate for us the possibility of an alternative history for the temple. Despite this, the clothing and utensils required for the rite have been crafted. Copper vessels for the Third Temple. On the left is the abuv, a 3-tiered stand used for roasting the omer on Passover. It is one of the copper vessels for the Third Temple. The barley is roasted using the coal that is located on the middle tier. The copper vessel that was used in the preparation of the food offering may be found on the far right near the back. In order to worship the Lord in the same manner as King David did 3,000 years ago, even the golden menorah, which is a 7-branched candelabra, has been crafted. In addition, Levitical musical instruments such as silver trumpets, lyres, and harps have also been crafted. 1 Chronicles 23:5. Cohen, who is descended from Aaron, the high priest, is receiving training at the school of the Temple Institute to prepare them to carry out their responsibilities within the temple. In addition, the final component, known as the red heifer, is currently being raised in Israel for the purpose of being sacrificed as part of the ritual cleansing of the priests and the vessels before they are allowed to enter the holiest of holy areas on the face of the entire planet. The Temple Institute was tasked with the task of recreating this 24-karat gold menorah, which is now in a usable condition for the Third Temple. The construction of the Third Temple does not require any additional preparation at this time. That is, everything with the exception of the land on which to construct it. After the mount was liberated in 1967, the Muslim world has made significant efforts to claim the entire 37-acre platform as its own sacred place. They call the location in Arabic Al-Aram Al-Arf, which translates to the noble sanctuary. In order to ensure the safety of the sacred site, the Muslim world has grown highly skilled at organizing violent demonstrations on the Temple Mount and spreading panic throughout the streets of Israel. When reports circulated that a Jewish presence will be created on the Temple Mount or that its own Muslim structures will be damaged, there is a corresponding increase in incitement to violence of this kind. A Jewish man stares out over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which has silver domes and was constructed around 705 AD. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest building in Islam. It occupies a position on the Temple Mount's southwestern border. Only a person who is extremely regarded, trusted, and revered by both Muslims and Jews would be able to devise a peace plan that will enable the Jewish people to worship the Lord in a temple that King David originally acquired for that purpose on Temple Mount. 2 Samuel 24:18-25. We can be confident that God is on the throne and in control despite the fact that we do not know who this man is or what kind of trouble, also known as Jacob's trouble, lies in store for us when he breaks the peace plan, as Daniel 9:27 forecasts. The words, "He who watches over Israel will neither rest nor sleep," are found in Psalm 121:4, which was written by King David. Because Israel was prophetically reborn as a nation in 1948, and the majority of these temple preparations have only started in the last 30 years, we know that the end-time Bible prophecy concerning the Third Temple will soon be realized. The video for today has come to an end. If you enjoyed it and would like to see more content like this, please remember to click the like button and subscribe to our channel.